Good morning. How are you doing? I am Sharon Pender, President and CEO of the Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council and the operator of the MBDA Business Center, Washington, D.C., and the MBDA Federal Procurement Center um, as well. And so we welcome you to Hot Sheets Live webinar, Where is the Money, Part 8. And today's conversation is CMMC, the future of cybersecurity. And so we know that you could be doing a whole lot of things this morning, and some people are bailing, unfortunately, are bailing water out of their basements, as if you're being in the mid-Atlantic, there's a lot going on. And so we are happy that you are with us today, because I promise you, this hour is going to be jam-packed with information you could not find anyplace else. And so we're going to get this started. And we have, you can see, but one of our headliners that's here, Katie Arrington, and I'm going to bring on the other folks and kind of introduce you, talk about the agenda, talk about why we're here, and then we're going to get rid of the talking heads and let the folks, the subject matter experts. I'm excited that Katie's here. She is renowned in her field, and we're just really blessed and happy and glad that she's there here this morning. And so I'm going to ask the others to kind of join us on screen so we can do some introductions and get the conversation started. Okay, Katie Arrington, Mark Evans, Michael Cardacci, and I'm looking for Matt.
He's there.
Okay, there's Matt, Dennis Smith, and Matt, I'm sorry, Vepraskas. And Matt, I hope I did that justice. Correct me, please. Matt, can I hear you? Okay, so you'll see the future of cybersecurity, an important topic, but let's just talk about right now who's here, and then we can just move through the conversation. First, we have Katie Arrington, Chief Information Security Officer for the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Acquisition. Ms. Arrington is currently the Chief Information Security Officer to Assistant Secretary, I just said that, for the Department of Defense. In this role, she serves as the central hub and integrated within the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisitions and Sustainment to align acquisition cyber strategy. As the cyber lead and the programmatic analytic advisor for strategic cyber programs, Ms. Arrington is responsible for conducting analysis within the major defense acquisition program portfolio across the Department of Defense. That means she's a bad woman, and we are just impressed out of our mind. That's what it means. Okay, prior to this role, Ms. Arrington served as a legislator, and she was a candidate for the South Carolina U.S. House of Representatives in 2018 and served as a South Carolina state representative for 2 terms. And so you're at the Pentagon this morning, correct?
I am. This is not a digital screen. That's actually real. So everybody, this is the Pentagon. We have come a long way. So we actually have a social media and digital studio that we can come in and actually have conversations, because in the DoD, our laptops are not enabled with cameras or microphones. So for us,
So we're doubly lucky, right? So we have
yes,
the subject matter expert, and we get a chance to see you.
yes,
Right?
and I'm not in my car, which has been where I've done a lot of webinars.
So if you're
Michael's laughing because he's been on.
I know.
Right. And if you're signed in here today, you just don't understand how lucky you are. But I'm going to talk right now about Michael Cardacci, who is CEO of Human Resources Technology. And he is, which is a cybersecurity and government contracting firm that provides a range of IT products and services. In recent years, Michael has led his firm to develop FedHive, one of the first cloud services offerings created by small business, specifically at the FedRAMP high impact level. Since then, he has led HR Tech to broaden its scope of business to ensure private organizations, nonprofits, and government contractors have accessibility to scalable customer-driven cybersecurity and cloud services. So that conversation that Dennis is going to have with you and Mark is really important because it is actually, how do we see it work? Mark Evans, who's one of our certified MBEs, we're real proud of him. He is founder and president of Share Tech Solutions. Mark, you want to wave? And over 13 years in the business, ShareTech Solutions specializes in enhanced service delivery relating to host IP-based technology solutions. ShareTech Solutions competencies include premium solutions for IP network infrastructure, network security, and in video and physical security solutions to help small and medium-sized businesses better utilize technology to maximize their efficiency and simplify data, voice, and cloud computing. As I said, he is one of our MBEs, and we're real proud of him. And we thank you, Mark, for what you did in terms of pulling this all for us today. And then we have Matt Vepraskas. Matt, am I murdering your name? You're still on mute.
Vepraskas.
We haven't. He is the Director of Enterprise Category Management and Sourcing Risk at Leidos. He is responsible for the supply chain risk and resiliency programs, implementing the corporate approaches to supply chain supply chain risk management, sustainability, and quality. A key focus of the team is the engagement with the small business community, connecting the company with partners across industry to support mutual growth and performance. And prior to this role, he was Chief Procurement Officer, and he's held several lead roles during his 11-year tenure with Lockheed Martin. And we are very, very happy to have you here, Matt, today. And we are doubly glad because Sharita Gaither, who is with Leidos as well, is a member of our board of directors. And so anytime we can have one of our corporate members, and Leidos, of course, has its #1 standing in the marketplace, we're glad to have you here. And so we want to move on to the agenda. We see who's here. You hear all the credentials. You should be impressed out of your minds. And we want to look at what the agenda is going to be today. We're going to first talk to Katie Arrington. I just cannot wait for this talk. And followed by Mark and Michael, we're going to talk to you about their experiences here. And then we will then talk with Matt in terms of this conversation during this hour. And so I'll ask all of you to go off camera except for Dennis, because I have not introduced Dennis, and Dennis is going to help lead us through this hour. Dennis Smith is the director of the MBDA Business Center, Washington, D.C. He has over 30 years of experience. We always say over 30 years, Dennis, but truth be told, it's probably about 40 years by now, isn't it? Would you admit to that? Dennis, I can thank you. Very good. And so Dennis has been our director of our MBDA Business Center for the last 5, this is going into our 5th year of this grant. And part of our grant with our business centers is the supplemental that we have received to put on these webinars. Our Hot Sheets newsletter. We have 10 additions to that. You want to see any of those, go to our website. This is, as I said, our 8th webinar. We're about to introduce Hot Chat, more to see. But Dennis, just take a moment, if you could, to talk about the work of the MBDA centers and why people should reach out and contact you.
Good morning. I'm Dennis Smith, Project Director of the Washington, D.C. MBDA Business Center. As Sharon pointed out, there are nearly 40 business centers around the country, funded by the U.S. Department of Commerce's Minority Business Development Agency. The Washington Center and the Federal Procurement Center are hosted by the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council. We assist businesses with their marketing, as well as finding access to capital. And we also like to think that we are great for technical assistance to business. And today, we will be, in fact, helping you with some technical assistance. We will be talking about CMMC, and we will talk about that. Right. We're going to have a highly informative discussion today on a topic that too often we are compelled to confront involuntarily. How many times have you or your business been hacked? How many times have you noticed a phishing expedition on your computer where there are bad actors everywhere? Nation states, terrorists, criminals, pranksters, and others. How is the US government responding to these acts of espionage, war, in the cyber world? So Sharon, that right there is what we're going to be talking about today.
And that
as you
sounds
know,
like, I'm sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
that's
I was
right.
gonna say, this is like a great lead in for your first guest. Is that not right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
So
so you want
today,
to call her on
that's
deck?
right. Absolutely. So
Okay.
let's bring on Miss Katie Arrington. She will have this discussion and give us some insightful information. Please, Miss Arrington, you are on mute.
I'm that YouTube person. So thank you for that awesome introduction, Sharon, and for Mr. Smith. You are exactly spot on. It is CMMC has been a long time in coming. It is not something that we have put out there to distract, to push away small businesses, to come to work with the DoD. It's actually to help them. What you just said is exactly what's happening every single day. Our adversaries, if anybody has ever read The Art of War, right? The easiest way to destroy us is from within. And they have been inserting themselves into our supply chain for years. We just didn't realize how. I would say we got an awakening. The Navy got a big awakening in a certain exfil, but we have had an awakening of how bad it is over the past several years. We've had several things that have reported the same information. We had a GAO report that about contractor networks and how we weren't doing the basics to do password updates to protect adversaries from getting in, antivirus software, or just cyber education. You mentioned the phishing schemes. The number one individual in a company who is most likely to get hacked is an executive assistant, because their job's to open every email, right? Their job is to be as informed as possible. Well, you really need to put some parameters and education around that and say, if you're reading an email from somebody that comes in from instead of .com, it's .cmm. Would you look to catch that? That's how the adversary is getting in. And we've had multiple reports to say this. Like I mentioned, the GAO report, we had Delivered Uncompromised by MITRE. We had the Navy Cyber Readiness Review, all of these things. And then most recently, the National Cybersecurity Solarium report. If you haven't Googled it, do it. It's very impactful. It came out of the NDAA last year. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. Acronyms are a thing here in the Pentagon. It's the National Defense Authorization Act. And that goes through every year. It's how we get our marching orders from Congress every single year. Last year in the NDAA, they stated that they wanted this report done by the Solarium, which was totally bipartisan, came out and made 6 pillar recommendations about cybersecurity for national security. And the biggest thing that I can say is that they actually said the CMMC is what is needed, a national cybersecurity program for companies to get certified and audited, to make sure that they understood and were doing the controls, the requirements to protect themselves. And that's the key word right there, yourselves. National security is not something that gets made in this building. It's you, your national security. The small businesses that help our partners in our national, our Department of Defense industrial base, you're the doers. We create strategy, we create contracts, we move the money, but it's you that does it. Our national security is in your hands. And if you're not as protected as possible, if you're not aware of all the things that are required to be done to protect yourselves, well, without you, we're at a loss. So we absolutely needed to get you guys the most important part of our national defense, aside from the warfighter, the people providing the platforms, the services, the networks. You are the ones we need to get secure, because you being there in the long term is critical. So we in the department realized, I came from industry a long time ago. Botox and fillers are doing a great thing for me. I'm a lot older than I look. And when my time in industry, I own my own non-traditional software development firm. And it's hard to get to work with the Department of Defense. You know, generally small businesses, if they're interested in doing work for the government, they can't only bid on one piece of work. It's a multitude of works, or you're working for several primes. And to be able to get positioned as a small business to do the work, you have to understand all of the different requirements. So if the Air Force is asking you to do X, Y, and Z to get ready to bid on this work, you're spending money and resources to get there. You're looking at your team. You're deciding whether you need to invest in a capability, and you're also bidding on work with the Navy that has a different requirement. And how do you decide how to, best use your resources? Well, we realize in cyber, that's what we were doing. We have a current standard that is in DFAR rule, Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation 252.204.7012. So you can ask your contracting folks. If you're a business owner, just look and see if you have that clause in any of your contracts. If you do, you are attesting to the federal government that you are doing all 110 controls of the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, special publication 800-171. You may have a POAM to do some controls, but you're actually attesting. So what we decided in the DoD is that was really, the NIST standard is the gold standard, but it's really not written so that, it's understood by a small business, right? It's more of a technical flair. I say I like everything on an 8th grade reading level. That way we all can understand and we can all use it. Because when I first came into this environment as a business owner, I would say it was like reading Latin. It wasn't until I really got my education and I educated myself about IT and cyber that I understood what I was looking at. So we wanted to create a model that was auditable, that was scalable and repeatable, that there was one standard for all DoD contracts, and that it was something that we understood that we shouldn't ask, nor should we pay for the same level of security for every Department of Defense contract, that it needed to be able to fit the requirement and the security that is needed. So a level 5 in the CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, is the utmost, highest, most expensive, exquisite security on any current known capability. Do we really need that for a company that's doing landscaping on a base? No. And we shouldn't expect that, nor should we pay for that. But why would I want a landscaper to have any kind of idea of what cybersecurity is? Well, one thing that COVID has showed us, one thing, is that there's one common thread that connects everybody, and we're on it. Our businesses, our livelihood, our children's education, our healthcare, for the past several months have been running through platforms like this that use the internet, that have IT, that have a new security, cybersecurity requirements that need to be imparted to maintain security so that the communication is whole, and the data, which is the most important thing, that you control who sees your data and who gets it and who can read it and how it's used. So the CMMC was our tool to help industry get to a multiple level, scalable, repeatable, one standard. You get audited one time every 3 years to make sure that you're capable to do work, that you understand the requirement for the Department of Defense in cybersecurity. So that's the CMMC. We
Okay.
understand that it's a big undertaking. There are a lot of resources, and today the panel you have some great people on the Fireside chat here today that can talk about all the different resources that are out there for small businesses, from what the DoD is doing and programs that we can help with, to the accreditation body, which is where the CMMC training and certification lies, with C3PAOs and all of the different tools to help companies get their CMMC certification, and what that they need to do to prepare for it. So with
Okay.
that, I can
Yeah.
stop for
And
questions.
yeah. And so what is the time frame that we are talking about? That we
So
have to be ready for this?
we are now. So everybody, that's a great question. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have that DFAR 7012 in your contract, you already there, right? You should be doing the 110 controls of the NIST, because you're touching CUI. You're running controlled unclassified information over your network or into your network. So you should be doing them already. As far as the new rule change, we are going into the public comment period. The rule change, which we're changing that DFAR rule to say, instead of every contractor that touches CUI needs to be attesting to the 110 controls of the NIST, it says that the contractor needs to have the CMMC certification required by the contract. So that rule change is underway. It should be done by the fall. We are already doing pathfinders, which are looking at current government contracts and doing tabletop exercises to make sure that the contractors would be able to be certified at the level in that contract. And the accreditation body has opened the initial training for C3PAOs, which are cyber third-party audit organizations. Their first class, I believe, starts August 10th. Don't quote me on that. It's in that time frame. And as they roll out the first round of graduates, the rule change will go into effect, and the first RFPs and RFIs for CMMC will start appearing in late fall 2020. So you need to get ready now. You can't get a CMMC certified audit, but you can absolutely go look at the model, which is on our website, or the AB, the CMMCAB.org, and look at the model. It is very clear understanding of the requirements per level, so companies should be preparing, but it is going to start impacting contracts this fall.
Okay, let's take some questions.
Yes. Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, Dennis and Katie. We've got some great questions coming in from our audience. One of those questions that seems to be bubbling up more is around what are some of the roadblocks do you see for companies getting CMMC certification?
Well, first, you know, the finding out what level they really need to be at. I think that's the first thing. I think that's not a roadblock. That's an education that every company should be doing, and looking at their organization and how they're set up. By using the model that's currently out today, they can do that to position themselves. The next thing that I would say would be the most, I guess, impactful, as my time as a small business owner and also working in large businesses within defense contracting, is, do I have the right resources in place to get to where I want to go? You know, that strategic vision. So if you're currently at a level 2 and by your own, you know, you're looking at the audit and you want to get to level 3, understanding the investment that you would need to make is a big deal. One of the main reasons in the model that we even created level 2 were for small businesses to be able to figure out how they can go. In level 1, there are 17 no-cost controls. simple things like, do you change your passwords when you bring a new device into your network? How do you provide network access? To the level 3, which will be when the rule change is completed, 130 control requirements. That's a big step. So we created level 2 for small businesses mainly to position themselves. Do they need to make an investment in their company to create the capability organically, or do they want to outsource it and look at cybersecurity as a service providers or a cloud service provider to be able to provide the level 3 certification, and understanding the investment that may be needed, because we are making security an allowable cost. And we are saying very clearly that in the RFIs and RFPs with the CMMC in the contract, we, the Department of Defense, understand the cost associated with it. And we're going to be doing cost realism so that when a bid comes in, and we see a significant variance in small businesses submissions, we're going to do realism on the rates to say you should be paying for X, Y, and Z, so your rate should be in this area. That's something we've never done in this realm. When the rule change went into effect in 2015, President Obama signed an executive order in late 2014 that created the NIST 171 and created that DFAR clause for contracts. No one went and did a study to figure out how much money that would cost. We've grown up, we've matured a lot, and now we realize it costs money, and how to get that to the companies, because that's, the title of this whole chat was where the money's at, right? You as business owners need to understand we are not going to ask you to do anything we're not willing to pay for. We've provided in the NDAA this current year, there are going to be grant programs to help small businesses bridge that gap. Much like if you Dennis, if you remember, we went from DICAP to RMF in
Yes.
we had grants that I applied for and got a $25,000 grant to help my company move from DICAP to RMF, right? To rewrite all of that documentation. We'll be doing a like program for CMMC, but we've also set up, Project Spectrum.ic is out of the Office of Small Business here at the Department of Defense, and that is a free capability where you can go and get education and consulting about the CMMC. There are going to be a lot of different things happening. So we really want to make sure we're going to get you the money to get to do the security that is required by the work that we're asking. Where the delta is going to come in for companies to get ready is if you are currently at a level 3 and you want to get certified at a level 5, but the work you're doing is at a 3, we're only going to pay for the level 3. We don't need the 5. So we need to bridge that delta with industry. But this is learning, we're going to learn as we go on this one. So stay tuned.
Okay. One other question we may get in.
Hi, Katie. This is Kenneth Clark. Thanks very much for that discussion about training and costs, because that was several questions you covered right there. But one other question is coming up, and that is, what is the CMC impact on third-party software, like from Apple, Microsoft, and others? I understand they're being waived or something. What's the story about that?
So COTS products already go through a certification process. They have an authority to operate on network systems. That's how we get to use them. So the CMMC does not apply to COTS products. So Microsoft, Apple products, all of the different software capability that you may be using, that's a different thing. This is about the critical thinking and how your company, your network is set up, how you are protecting what you are in charge of. So products are not part of it. Company enterprise networks and the CMMC, this is a really big point I hope I can impart in my time and tenure serving you, the taxpayers, in this role, is that the model that what we created shouldn't ever become a checklist. If it becomes a checklist, we have all failed in what we've done, because this has been a collaboration. It's really about creating the critical thinking about cybersecurity. Why do you need two-factor authentication? Kenneth, I'm married, love my husband. He knows my password to my iPhone because that's the way we go in my family. There ain't nothing here. But I really need to make sure that this phone, right, my government phone, has two-factor authentication, because if I ever got crazy and used the same password on both, that would be a risk. That's why we have two-factor, right, to buy down risk. Companies need to have that kind of critical thinking about cyber. We're all of this generation, right? These, I call them the magic stones, came up. I remember my first Motorola flip phone. Do y'all remember those? And do you all remember frantically like hitting the letter number 2 to like type and text a sentence, and they charged us by text? Do you all remember those days?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had no idea the power that this held and what access I was giving. So our generation missed a beat about critical thinking about these. And the CMMC is to put that critical thinking skill back to us. We all have it. We learned it in school when we used to go to the library in the Dewey Decimal System, and we had to think critically about how to create a book report and what we needed to do. That's what the CMMC is. It's to give you the critical thinking skills to protect your business, your IP, your company, your personal information, your banking information, to keep it out of the wrong hands.
All right. Thank you, Katie. This right here has enlightened all of us. And the urgency of this is here, present, and your informative discussion has helped us to move to that next level and to move to implement what we need to implement. We want to thank you very much, and we hope that you can hang around, because at the end, we will have opened up for even further questions.
Sure.
But right now,
I'm going to run away for about 10 minutes to go to another brief, and then I'll come back. But there's one parting thing I'd like to tell everybody.
Please.
This CMMC is for the DoD, but if you go to that National Cyber Solarium report, they are saying that this needs to become a national program, and they want to amend Sarbanes-Oxley to include cybersecurity in it. So it's the DoD who's leading the charge, but know that this is something, that is going to be impacting your business, whether it be today, next year. It is happening. And then the last minute thing to just say that we can't insert CMMC into new contracts, thing one. So if you're in a contract now, we're not going to, in the fall, turn the light switch on, and we are taking 5 years to roll this out. So we'll be very deliberate in the rollout period, the first year, on what contracts, and working with you, industry, our partners, to make sure that you're certified before you're required to be so, which is at time of award of a new contract that has a CMMC requirement. So don't panic, but get prepared. It's like knowing a hurricane's coming, right? I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. You make sure you have water and batteries and food. Get prepared, because it is coming. And with that, I'll be back in a bit.
All right. Thank you, Katie. Thank you. And we will bring on our next two panelists, Mark Evans and Michael Kadesi. That's right.
Good morning.
Hello, Mark. Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
As we can see, this is a serious matter. How will businesses be impacted, and how the small businesses absorb this cost of doing business? What are the rules of engagement? Where do we find expert advice regarding what is needed? What resources are needed? These are some of the questions that Mark and Michael will help answer. Right. Oh,
hey, Dennis, thank you much.
That's right. They've had some briefing already on your bios. And so we will, in fact, move right on. So gentlemen, please tell us more about CMMC.
Hey, Dennis, so I would like to just say that cybersecurity is a real threat, and some of the things that I've been noticing around cybersecurity since I've been in this position or this spot is that we don't even realize when the threats are happening. So it's critical, and I think this should be a baseline for every small business to be able to start to plan to have a cybersecurity posture that will help them protect their businesses. And you'll see that I partnered with Michael and his company specifically for that. And I'll let him tell you a little bit about what he's seeing in the small business space as well.
Mhm.
Thanks, Mark.
Michael?
So yeah, we're seeing more and more anecdotally of folks looking at trying to move to that security stance. A couple of questions you asked were what are the impacts? I think that one of the things is that as a small business, because I was in the same situation, you start to think about this extra cost and extra, effort and resource. But I think it's a requirement that's necessary. We're in a situation where if small businesses could see the reports that we get of the attacks on a daily basis, because it's not like the old days where there's some kid who's trying to hack anymore. They're using bots, they're using automation, and so every aspect of your network is being touched all the time by things. There's hundreds and hundreds of these attacks being done, trying to find the weaknesses. So it's and you're right, Mark. It's invisible to you if you don't have the equipment to watch all of these these attacks happening. And that's kind of what the CMMC is about, right? It's to raise the awareness that, hey, this is out there. I know small businesses, nobody knows about me. It's my small little network, et cetera, but it's not the case anymore. Everybody's vulnerable, and it's that most vulnerable subcontractor that gets attacked and then is the opening to a major project for the government.
That's a great point. Just to give you an idea of how serious it is, I'm strategically aligned with a forensic company as well. And we were doing a demo to an agency and identified a breach in the agency in the demo. So that just lets you know that you don't even have a clue who's in your system the majority of the time until they've landed, scaled across your system, already captured all the information that they want. So again, I would strongly recommend every small business to have this just as a platform or a posture to start to build that infrastructure, because the majority of the small businesses will only need a level 1. And I think this should just be a baseline to start to look at how to build out your security posture going forward.
Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit about how it's going to impact small businesses and what should small businesses do to prepare themselves.
Again, going back to some of the key challenges, if you think about it, right now, the easiest way for a hacker or a breacher to get into a federal system is through the weakest point, and that weakest point being the small business. I strongly recommend small businesses, one, your internal IT staff put some requirements around making sure that they have a cybersecurity posture. If you're using an outsourced service, make sure that they're directly focused with being structured around making sure the security of your system is in place and that it's at a level of security that will actually meet at least those first 17 requirements. And there's an assessment that you can use as well to determine that security level.
Okay. Please, we're going to have some questions from the audience. And Ken or Sonia, please.
Yes, good morning. Again, one of the questions that came in is around how can your partnership help companies get CMMC certification?
So I'll take that. So we're certified FedRAMP at the high impact level, and Katie's asked me to be on the Pathfinder for the CMMC reciprocity to FedRAMP so that we can overlay those same security. It follows the NIST 171 requirements. So all of our controls that we have within our enclave, whatever the government contractor in question uses of our controls, they inherit that level of control. So, you know, out of the 110 controls for that level 3, the controls that are associated, and they can be up to about 80%, those controls that are associated with all the things that we do in our enclave, you inherit those, so you don't have to worry about those. Access controls will continue to be something that the contractor themselves will have to work on, and folks like us or folks like Mark can help bridge that gap. You know, if your internal IT organization or folks don't understand what needs to be done, Mark can come in and make sure that those requirements are met for the access standpoint, and then we overlap in that part to make sure that there are no gaps.
Okay. Next question, Ken.
Gentlemen, it seems like it's good to hear that that there'll be some costs that could be handled by grants from the federal government to get to these levels. But what kind of costs are we really looking at? How much will it cost for us for people to get to level 2, 3, and 5?
Mike, I'll let you dive in, but one of the first things I'd like to just say is that level 1, if you're not there, you should be there. And that's pretty much a lift that you can do internally because it's just basic standard stuff that should be happening today. And Mike, you can talk a little bit about moving into the additional levels.
Yeah, so that first level is really no cost. That's all, like Katie had said, passwords and access control, you know, making sure that you know who's coming into your space and who has access to those sorts of things. As you start moving up in the levels, the cost goes up kind of significantly. That 1, 2 is pretty minor. 2 to 3 becomes a bit of a jump, and then 4 and 5, we're an IL 4-5. We should be at a CMMC 4 or 5 based on what the final requirements come out to be, and that's, you know, we have dedicated staff that is doing these things on an ongoing basis because we have to monitor the systems proactively, right? So we have people who are looking at tools. We got tools that are automated to make sure that their thresholds are being met and those sorts of things. So those costs really go up because you start to look at labor costs. And for instance, right now I've got 5 folks associated with doing a lot of the work that we're doing. So if you add that on to as a small business, that becomes pretty expensive. But we're looking at doing this for other customers, right? So as a small business, it's kind of untenable at a 4 or 5 unless you have a specific need. But the 3, I think, in some instances, especially around the Beltway here, a 3 is going to be reasonable, and you're talking in the tens of thousands of dollars for the 3. But the 1s and 2s, a couple $1,000s, I would think, would make that happen. And as far as, for instance, if you're talking about somebody that you're using our controls, we just did a small company that had 7 servers, and we brought it down to 1 virtual server with multiple slices, and it's something on the order of $1,200 a month, right? So it depends on whether you want to do it in-house or whether you want to outsource it, because you're taking a slice of our controls as opposed to having to absorb all of the controls.
That's a great point. And one other key point too is when you take these services outside of your environment, you have the ability for it to scale. So what happens is it's very hard to retain employment staff for a CISO or someone at that level. But when you have a resource like an outsource, if those people move on to another job, because these are very highly demand jobs, it's invisible to you, but internally that could be a huge impact to your business if you tried to bring that into in-house.
All right. I want to thank you, gentlemen. That's a lot to consume. And we will have some further questions at the end. But right now, what I want you to do is to bring on our representative, Matt Vepraskas, and you gentlemen can sign off, and at the end, please come back and for questions, okay? Matt is from Leidos, and everyone will be impacted by these changes. There are over 300,000 government contractors. Major government contractors too will be impacted. And so our next panelist, Matt, will be discussing with us with Leidos, who is one of the major contractors here and is also a board member of the Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council. So Matt, we are delighted to have you on today. As we're saying, we want you to talk a little bit, Matt, about your responsibility as the supply chain risk management and resiliency programs at Leidos. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And we are very, very, very happy to be participating in this webinar, as well as on the board of directors for this fine organization. It's something that we take very seriously, the general outreach to the small business, the diverse supplier, large and small, within the Washington metro area, as well as across industry. And events like this are extremely important to make sure that we're continuing that relationship and sharing all this great information with one another as we move. As you mentioned, I do work in procurement, so I'm the unusual member of the panel here, and then I'm a supply chain person by training. My official title is Category Management and Risk, and that sort of encompasses 3 different areas that are all really right around the partnerships principle and getting that partnership strength within the company. We handle category management, so the interactions with the major suppliers for our internal purchases includes things like facilities, travel, HR benefits, putting the contracts in place and managing the suppliers themselves. I have responsibility for the small business and supplier diversity program as well. So example is organizations like this, as well as matchmaking and other collaborations that we put in place across industry to build up and maximize the amount of small businesses that we're able to use on our government contracts. And then lastly, something that's germane to this conversation, as well as just across the world right now, is risk and resiliency within the supply chain. And it's been spoken about here so far about cybersecurity, as well as things like the COVID-19 pandemic that we didn't even see coming 6 months ago. This is a really, really quickly changing area. We focus on risk mitigation. We also include things like sustainability, so the greening of the supply chain, as well as other areas, quality standards of things coming in, and then disaster planning for things like COVID or this lovely hurricane that we're experiencing here. That's all part of what our team does across Leidos.
Okay, and so Matt, what advice would you give businesses currently doing business with Leidos regarding CMMC? We know that flow down is very important.
Right. So as has been said multiple times on this webinar, this is a journey. This is not a, we need to be here now. It's a, we need to get there together over the course of the next 5 years. And so recognizing that this is a step-by-step iterative process to get there is critical to putting everybody in the right mindset to be able to address this. And this is something that Leidos is having to deal with and address ourselves as well. We're going through a number of things internally to understand where we need to be positioned with regard to these different certification levels and any gaps that we would have. So the biggest piece of advice that I can give and that we do give to our partners right now is to ensure that you are performing and meeting the standards required by NIST today. This is something that you have to certify to, self-certify, and you need to ensure that you are meeting those minimum requirements and those standards as effectively as you can. And that will put you in a really great position to be able to be certified to the CMMC level when that requirement comes into place in the near future. The biggest thing also is to really take time to understand exactly where you and your business are going to lie on that certification threshold tier. Not everyone needs to be a 5. The majority of businesses are going to need to be a level 1. As our panelists previous to me said, it's a fairly, I don't want to say basic, but a very good threshold to meet at the level 1 level for just basic cybersecurity hygiene. The other thing to do is to consider what you're handling data-wise. So if you are someone who is handling CDI information as part of your contract, one possible thing to do as well is to just confirm that this is information that you do need to be receiving as part of your contract and it hasn't been passed on for a variety of reasons. Are there ways that you can minimize the amount of CDI that you receive as part of your day-to-day work? That's the kind of thing that will help make this process easier as well. What you would do in that case is to partner with your prime, with your customer, to ensure that you're only getting the required information that is absolutely necessary. And the last thing I would point out is that this isn't just something that's being layered onto each individual business. It's the responsibility of all of us within the supply chain to our government customers to be sure that we're meeting these standards in the right way. So you need to make sure that you're putting some pressure and onus on the prime contractor like Leidos. It's our responsibility to not just help identify the right partner, but also to make sure that the partners are being utilized in the most effective way that they can, and that they meet all the requirements for the contracts. What a big concern that I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's good to know. That's good to know. It's good to know, Matt. Let's see whether or not, Sonia, you have any other questions?
Yes, we do have some questions out here. One question came in: how will Leidos work with minority and women-owned businesses on projects requiring CMMC? Can you describe or share a little bit further about that?
Sure. So supplier qualification is a big part of what we do, and it's going to continue to become more important. And so this will be something that we will be working with each of our suppliers on to be sure that they're meeting those standards. We're putting a lot of emphasis into just general engagement within the diverse supplier community to include women-owned and minority-owned businesses. And what we will be doing is putting in place a number of outreach organizations and programs in order to increase awareness. We need to be sure that we're reaching out to these companies and ensuring that they understand the coming amount of pressure that it will be for these certification levels. We have a number of events that we've run in the past. The big one that unfortunately we haven't been able to have this year is our supplier symposium, but we will be augmenting that with some virtual training, some additional outreach, and then helping to guide companies to resources that they could use to become certified.
Okay, Ken, you have a question?
Yes, Matt, it's good to know that you're offering help and support to your contractors. Of course, whenever a major corporation is online, all the minority businesses want to know what opportunities are there work with you right now. Are there any hot projects that you have out there that you're looking for minority business support?
We're always looking for minority business support. Of course, it's a huge part of what we do, and it's a big focus area for us. I would encourage you to attend the matchmaking events that are prevalent across industry. We've mentioned Sharitha Gaither, who's our Small Business Liaison Associate Director, who is also a board member here. And also just to reach out to subcontracts staff across the Leidos environment. You can reach out to me and others as well, and we can help get you allocated to the right area. And the one thing that I would add is, a major concern for us and me as a supply chain person is to ensure that we are maintaining a competitive environment. So it's in my interest to be certain that as many companies as possible meet these standards so that we can have that competitive environment and continue to manage and maintain that as we move forward into this.
All right. I think that what we're going to do now is that we're going to open it up to all questions, and we're going to bring everyone back. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I want to bring everybody back on for open chat. And please, Sonia, let's hear some questions that we have.
Great, thank you, Dennis. Yes, Dennis, and this is to anyone on the panel if they'd like to share. What has the impact of the pandemic done on cybersecurity, in your opinion? Share your thoughts.
Well, for us as a small business, we, as a security company, we already had set things up for security issues. So we potentially didn't have any issues, but some of our customers began scrambling because they weren't used to a wholesale working from the telecommuting from home kind of kind of effort. So all of a sudden we had a ramp up, and there was some resources that were being stretched to the limit at the very beginning. Since then we've been able to accommodate, but that kind of goes to the disaster or business recovery plan of a situation like that. Nobody expected a widespread impact like COVID's provided us.
Very much the same for us as well. We found our customers scrambling to put VPN in place for their home workers because the home infrastructure was much less secure, a lot more people on that infrastructure. So those discussions were around tying VPN in and growing their security posture from home.
Okay.
Gentlemen, it looks like there might be a business opportunity for auditors, with there being over 300,000 businesses needing to get onto CMMC pretty quickly. Is that true? Is there a new business opportunity out here, and how does one become a CMC auditor?
So Katie had explained earlier, the accreditation board is providing the path for that. So the CMMCAB.org is where an organization would go, and they are planning on having, I guess, their first class start on August 10th or right around there, sometime in August, to get the first accreditors. And I think the first class is 60 organizations. Right now, the last I saw, they had about 240 companies signed up. There are 300,000 government contractors, so you can do the math on that. The majority of them are going to be level ones, but there'll be 5s and higher going forward.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, we do. There is a question coming in from our audience about can you speak generally about the liability of small to medium-sized businesses if CUI or IP is exposed due to cloud services provider breach?
So the cloud service provider shoulders the responsibilities of the controls associated, and so that would be our piece that we're responsible for. Ultimately, the contract holder is the one who is responsible to the government. So if the contractor is a prime directly, then they are responsible. And then obviously our responsibility would be through the contractor itself.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, we want to thank you all. And this information has been very valuable. And I'm glad that we have access to you. I want to bring back on right now our leader, Ms. Sharon Pender, and for Sharon to, in fact, close us out for this morning. And once again, gentlemen, thank you all for this very valuable information. Hello, Sharon.
Hi, and you know what? I'm sitting here, I'm much smarter than I was an hour ago, but I'm thinking that this conversation really shouldn't be over. And so I know that there has been a lot of questions placed in the questions box. And as we've done in previous webinars, we address all the questions and we post them on our website that's hosting our webinars, which is, and we'll send this information out as well, which is www.mbdafpc.com. And that's where our previous 7 webinars are. People have been asking, where can they get this information? And so I think it's just really, really invaluable. So I'd like to thank the team. I'd like to thank our really, really superb speakers, our subject matter experts on this topic, one of very importance. And so I think that people will have a lot to talk about. But as we kind of bring this hour to a close, and we always share with folks that we try to keep it to an hour, I'm hoping that we can have a part 2 of this conversation at some point in time in the future. But as we move forward in terms of the information that we are imparting to our minority businesses and to our corporate members. Here you'll see on screen, these are the emails addresses or the points of contact for our speakers here today. And so again, we're transparent in terms of information, even going beyond. We have some upcoming webinars that we're excited about. At the end of the month, I think it's going to be August 21st, we're going to talk about contact tracing, a conversation about how it's done, what it's doing, where the opportunities are, but about contact tracing. And as we move into September, we're going to bring on more chief procurement officers from WMATA and the airport to talk about, how industries are reopening, those that have been severely impacted. And so we'll continue the conversation and we'll continue it this way as long as we can. And so we thank you for being here today. You can hit us on our social media at CRMSDC. We appreciate any event, all of that information, but follow us on social media. There's a lot to be had, and our job is to add value to our minority businesses and to add value to our corporate members. And as we have pivoted in March to accommodate not only COVID, but the issues of social justice, social injustice rather, we will continue to stay front and center with that. I will part by saying that one of our many sponsors is Southwest Airline, and our next webinar, we will be raffling off some Southwest Airline tickets. And so we hope to see you on August the 21st. So thank you again, and we'll be talking soon. Bye-bye.